of those ASMR sound files. But it is the Your Story Matters podcast, and I'm happy to introduce the brand new series that we've started entitled Micro Matters. So be sure, if you haven't checked them out yet, you will if you keep on listening, because these are little thoughts that I put together throughout the week to help you in your recovery from trauma and your healing towards greatness. Also for 2025, we have brand new guests appearing on the Your Story Matters podcast. So definitely hit the subscribe button so you'll get all the latest episodes when they drop. Again, thanks for joining us. And now enjoy today's episode. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Micro Matters here on the Your Story Matters podcast. I'm Branon Dempsey. Thanks again for downloading this episode, and we ask that you also hit the subscribe button before I continue so that you can get all the new episodes when they drop. Okay, so it's Christmas time. It's the holidays. Here is your quote-unquote holiday special podcast. And I had to laugh because in choosing different topic names or titles for this episode, I wondered between, here's one for you, there's no place like boundaries for the holidays, or it's the most dysfunctional time of the year. So I had a lot of fun going between the two, and I think we're going to stick with probably both because they both apply. And I wanted this episode to go out to you to give you some tools and some encouragement while entering to the holidays. Now, as everybody knows, this is where family comes into play. And this can be the double-edged sword because I don't know about you, but half of my family I prefer not to see, The other half I enjoy. But no matter what you may choose to do on the holidays, boundaries are essential for not only enjoying the time that you have with your family, but keeping peace and safety for yourself. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about Christmas and the holidays, it's already stressful enough, right? And we have not just members of our family, but people in society that just take things way too seriously. So I thought I would also introduce to you another funny note here that I actually received from my son as we were talking about the holidays coming, and they see the stress that mom and dad are going through and everything that we're trying to do for them and for the family. And he this morning gave me a ticket, and it says, "Keep this coupon." And he handed it to me, and I asked him, "Well, what's this for, son?" And he said, "Oh, Dad, this is a fart coupon." And I said, "Okay, how do I use this?" And he goes, "Well, you can use this redeemable at any time that you choose whenever you want to fart." And I thought, you know what? That's just fantastic. I mean, here is a young man making light of such what could be a very stressful situation and season, right? And yet his reminder is just to have fun, to go with it, and to, yes, fart, giving the permission for my wife and I to not take things so seriously, especially when it comes to the family dynamics, because we all know it can be very overwhelming, especially when stress intensifies with you trying to keep up your boundaries and at the same time when those that are trying to push them, right? So let's talk about a few items. First of all, I want to ask you the question, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to have boundaries? Well, one thing that comes to mind for me is that there's this guilt and obligation, okay? Because as you know, family traditions carry expectations, right? And already right there, that's an obligation. And we feel pressured to show up and meet those demands. And when we don't meet them, of course, we feel guilty. Or let's say it this way, when it comes to saying no to a family member, or no, we're choosing to do this instead, on the holidays, then it feels like letting others down. Even though in our mind, everything seems right with our decision, but there's still that side of us that feels, oh man, oh God, what happens if they don't like my choice? And then there's the guilt. And then what happens? I don't know about you, but for us, we've had to redo our plans because of the fact that, yes, either the guilt was too heavy or the personality was too strong, in which we had to go back and say, okay, yes. Now, over the years, we have changed our stance, and we're learning how to make decisions and stick with them no matter what. Here's another idea of why it's hard. The fear of conflict, okay? This is huge. And I think the fear of conflict even happens before we enter the doors of our family members or before they hit our doors, right? Some family member may react negatively, okay? And they're going to react negatively because they may already be a negative person. This may be a very high narcissist in your family anyway. So it actually doesn't even matter what you may do, say, or not. They're going to be that way because that's just who they are. They want to hold the power and they want to lord it over you, especially when it comes to the holidays. Now, my parents were the king and queen of this whole scenario of making conflict so huge where it just seemed nearly impossible to come against them. And the thing I believe that upsets us all in going through this is that they question our decisions and then they become either passively, which can sometimes be worse, or visibly upset. And when this happens, this control, because that's what it is, when they get upset, they're telling you that they disagree with your decision. And by either passively or visibly getting upset, it's to throw you into a consequence, to make you suffer, because that's what they use to control you. And as a result, or in the process, they will silence you, or they will give you the cold shoulder, or there's no contact from them. And then we had this encompassing fear, right? This is the fear of conflict. All right, moving on. Does any of this sound familiar to you? I know it does for me, and I already have a cringe factor going up to like the level of 10 right now. Okay, so here's another one. Old patterns. Okay. Well, you're not the way you used to be, or come on, this is not the way that you used to act. Those are old patterns because those are family relationships that have a history on you. And this is where we try to break out of it, but yet we fall back into these old roles. And then we beat ourselves up after the family gathering and think to ourselves, why did I fall back into those old habits? Why did I continue to have the same answer as I did when I was a kid? Now, if you are a peacemaker, then speaking up can feel very unnatural, okay, if you're coming out of these kind of situations, because of the fact that you're no longer keeping peace. But for those who, I mean, that's highly awkward also. If you're a peacekeeper in the family, speaking up also is not just unnatural, but it's forbidden, okay? So old patterns is another reason of why it's hard to set boundaries with family during the holidays, or it could be any day, not just a holiday. Here's another one, emotional triggers. Oh my gosh, this is worse, I think, sometimes, because this is when, before we even pack to leave or get the house ready, this could be weeks before, this could be months before. Oh man, here's another holiday coming. And already that brings triggers, right? Because I know in my life, bad things happen during the holidays. And it wasn't just mom and dad arguing. There was also a lot of pain and trauma that I experienced. So that's on top of mom and dad arguing and the family splitting up and all the emotional pain that I went through as a result of my trauma. So yeah, you bet family gatherings are going to stir all that up, especially when a lot of that pain is unresolved. Our emotional reactions make boundary setting even harder because we're already at a disadvantage of where our mind is going. So how do you undo the triggers, the patterns, the conflict, the guilt, and the obligation? Well, this is one thing that even my wife and I were just talking about today. Giving yourself space, giving yourself buffer. There's no question that when you look out at the stores, whether it be grocery, retail, wherever that you go, there are people just running around mad. Why is that? Well, think about it. It's the holidays. They have their families coming over too. They're probably going through the same things that you and I are. So give people, even, and I just say this as a side note, give people at the store, the restaurant, wherever, give them buffer also. But mainly give yourself that peace. And number one, no one is going to, or no one does own you unless you let them. Unless you let that family member have power over you, they will not have power. Do you need to fear the conflict? Well, if family members go silent on you, is that the worst thing in the world? It can probably be the best thing because you won't hear from them for a while. So if they don't like your decision, you're not asking for permission to make your decisions for your family. You are making decisions not just for that, but for your own health. And you don't need anybody's permission to do that. Old patterns, when they come up, family history, whatever, you're not the way you used to be, you're right. They're right. Because you're breaking that cycle and that pattern to no longer be the same version of yourself. You are now being a new version of yourself by no longer putting up with their, you got it, okay? Their dysfunction, their trash, their crap, whatever they want to put in your yard that shouldn't be there. You no longer are putting up with it. And that's also another reason why it can feel unnatural and uncomfortable to speak up. The emotional triggers, this is what my therapist has always encouraged me with. You're going to have triggers. I don't think there's any way around it to say that I'm no longer going to face them or fear them because they're going to happen. The reality is, what do we do with them? I think that's the key. It's not, am I going to have a trigger? It's, how am I going to deal with this trigger when it comes? And am I going to allow it to rule over me, or am I going to rule over it? That's the question. Because, see, no one else can handle my emotions but me. No one else is going to feel the way I feel. Therefore, no one else can own the way I feel, not even the narcissist. So there's your boundary right there. So what are some other things that you can do? Know your limits. Take time to reflect on what is healthy for you and decide how much time, energy, and space you can give. Secondly, communicate clearly and upfront with your family. Be direct, but be kind. For example, I can't stay the whole day, but I'd love to join you for dinner. They may come back, well, why can't you stay the whole day? And then you just repeat yourself. I'm sorry, we can't stay the whole day, but I would love to spend this portion of the day with you. Can we do this? Ask the question. Anticipate the pushback. This is the third thing, because it's going to happen. Prepare for the resistance. I think when we in our minds think, well, no one's going to question me and I'm not going to let them do that. Well, but what happens when they do? See, we work ourselves up into a frenzy until when a situation occurs, and then emotionally we're checked out. We can't deal with it. So stay firm and loving without, here's the key, without over-explaining. You don't need to commit. You don't need to obligate yourself to anybody. Therefore, you don't owe anyone an over-explanation of why it is that you've chosen that. Remember, boundaries are about you. They're even not so much about the other people. They're for you. So you can have your own sense of self-care, and it puts you in your own agency of controlling your own emotions. Here's another one. Use I statements for yourself. So focus on your needs, not on their behavior. For example, instead of saying, well, they made me feel this way, it's better just to say, I feel overwhelmed. I feel this when they say those things. Because you're putting ownership on what you're in control of what you feel, not them. It doesn't matter what they do. When it comes to last minute changes or whatever may go awry, like, you didn't bring the turkey or whatever, that you forgot the present, or the gift wasn't good enough, you can say to yourself, I feel down and rejected about how they responded. Not the other way of blaming them, because blaming them doesn't make up for how you feel. Okay, we're in control. You got this. You have control of your own emotions. Here's another one that my wife and I talk about regularly when we go to family. Have an exit plan. That's right. Have an exit plan. Don't be afraid to stick to your decisions and make a plan before you arrive or before they come over, and just say, you know what, we're going to call dinner time at 2 p.m. or we're going to go over to their house at 3 p.m., whatever. And we're going to have dinner. We're going to eat at such and such time. We're going to open gifts, whatever. And then by 6 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and wind everything down. And if that means even helping, grandpa to the door, then we need to do that because we have things to do the next day. Okay. Or if you're going to your family member's house, it can be like, okay, well, we're going to be there at 2. We're going to leave at 5. And you can go through the examples of what you want of, well, we're going to leave at 5 because, and don't lie that you got a doctor's appointment the next day. Just say, you know what, I just need to take some time for myself and rest. I've enjoyed being here. This has been great, but there's some other things that we need to take care of. Don't be afraid of caring for yourself, caring for your family. So have an exit plan. It's okay to leave, really is. And do it beforehand, so that way you're not caught in the moment and you're trying to think about plans and how to change them when everything's stirring around the family, because it's going to flood you with confusion and you won't be able to think clearly, and therefore you won't be able to leave the way you want. So be prepared. Have an exit plan. Lastly, practice self-compassion. I've kind of been saying this anyway, but be patient with yourself. Okay. Be patient with others. Also, remember this too. Even when you present boundaries with your family, they're never perfect. Okay. As well as I do, narcissists have this crafty way of getting inside your head, and it can be real messy. So you need to be real kind to yourself. One thing that helps me, that I learned from my therapist long ago, is when you're with your family and dysfunctionings, that's right, it's a verb. When it happens, you can just say to yourself, or look over to your spouse or your friend or loved one, whatever, and you can say, yep, there they go again. So there you can just identify right away that there's dad popping off those jokes. Yep, there's my brother talk about things that happened 30 years ago that really have no relevance. It's easy to label it so that you can laugh it off, and it also makes it a little bit light. Again, it's your fart coupon, okay? Lastly, and I'm just going to close with this, setting boundaries and all these plans we talked about, it isn't selfish. It's healthy. It's self-preservation in a way of your peace, and it's self-care. So are the boundaries about you, or are they about them? The boundaries are really about you, because they protect your well-being, and it also fosters healthier relationships. So this holiday season, please do 2 things. Get yourself a fart coupon, and then give yourself permission to prioritize your peace. Thanks again here for joining me on this Micro Matters podcast. I hope that you enjoy. And as you do, will you please share this out with your friends, those that you feel will benefit from this message, or talk about the things that you've learned from it. Drop me a comment in any of our socials and let me know what really spoke out to you, and what are some ideas that maybe you have that you'd like for me to talk about. Anyway, thanks again for subscribing here to the Your Story Matters podcast. I'm Branon Dempsey, and remember, your story matters. See you next time. Bye.